nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just know that I'm there. Okay, the first thing is the approval of the. Is this even on? Can you hear me? No.
You might.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
The first thing on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the October 15th, 2013. Any discussions?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Is there any public comment? Go ahead.
Excuse me for reading this, but I do want to keep it short as possible. My name is Susan Harrington. I'm a community member, parent, friend who cares about the school community. I know that we have great students and we have very qualified teachers for providing our children with a quality education, as shown in our rankings. I also know or have worked with most of you in respectful intentions and your viewpoints. Having said this, I am at the same time very concerned about Cambridge's workplace ethics and financial practices. I realize that the Board of Ed has been struggling to be effective, but this is not happening. I do not understand why you can't agree to disagree and without attacking each other's character. We are an educational institution that teaches children to be respectful, caring, accepting differences, being truthful, and trustworthy. Yet our school etiquettes can't seem to model this, at least some of them. This is no way a board member should be quitting, due to this type of circumstance. Peggy is a sweet, community-minded person who was voted in by many community members, but obviously felt very frustrated and harassed by other board members. So your letter, Tom and Paul, was very upsetting to me, and it should be to everyone else. Why not use some of that kindness and respect you showed in the letter to your members on the board? And that was not a secret. But is this just a tip of an iceberg or a bigger problem? In my opinion, all of the administrative structure is responsible for its dysfunction. It's like someone being bullied and everyone is standing by letting this happen. And I feel that's acceptable. I've also been listening to many parents. I've talked to ex-teachers, staff, and students who have told me similar stories about the same thing. If you disagree, if you ask questions, or you complain, you'll face retribution. Phone calls, harassment, job loss, students not getting the recognition they deserve. Yes, it does happen here at Cambridge. So this is not just a board problem. Maybe the hotline of the Communications Committee was not a bad idea. Unfortunately, and I hate to use this word, but I can't get a better one, this kind of mafia-type atmosphere, which may not happen for everybody, but it happens for enough people, often happens when there is either lack of leadership, power in the wrong hands, when there's not enough transparency or oversight. The second area I'm concerned with is our financial practices. I'll pick one incident that people are familiar with. There was a suggestion to put in a fuel pump by our bus garage instead of trucking the buses up street to fuel up. I don't know if this has been changed or not, but I mean, this is a great idea. And most other schools have this. This is a common thing. Almost every school does this. The quoted price to do this by our, and I think it was one of our architects, this was in the newspaper, was kind of a shocking $190,000. Well, I asked several school districts, I asked their transportation supervisor, well, how much did it cost for you to put in a fuel pump that was, safe and regulated? And they were giving me prices of somewhere between $10,000 or $20,000. And let's say for upgrades, maybe it would be $30,000 or $40,000. So what I ask is, what would our school have done if we had passed this to approve this? What would you have done with the leftover money? Again, is this a tip of an iceberg? Okay, is it? Because with other things, and I've been through many building projects, our building projects are being approved by voters, and then we see rooms downsized, materials cheapened, things added, and other things never done. But none of this ever comes back to the taxpayers. So will this happen to the library project coming up? And And believe me, we probably do need a good library, and I'm not against that. So why don't we have a budget committee? And maybe you do. I just noticed it was on the agenda. I mean, I think every school has it. I don't know why that should be a big deal to formulate. So hopefully, you know, we do have it now. But my thought is, well, maybe the two previous board members who, you know, did not vote our superintendent's contract, maybe it wasn't the fact that he himself was necessarily lacking in obviously had a good relationship with teachers and faculty, but perhaps because this atmosphere of chaos existed behind closed doors. Now, I hope that, I mean, I would like to see our school go in a healthier direction, and I think it needs to really relook at itself and change some of its climate and practices. What seems to work for maybe half or more, it's not necessarily then happening for the whole school. What I would like to see is a board that I hope is diverse. That isn't a cookie cutter. Everybody agrees, passes everything. But something that represents all the community and respects each other and helps each other out. I certainly want a board that's well informed, has all of the information they need, so they can make knowledgeable decisions that are best for everybody, okay, not just a few. And I need a board that constantly challenges the status quo to see how we can do both, you know, things better for less. There are a lot of struggling people in our community, and I respect those people that have tried to fight for those people. On the other hand, we do obviously need to pay for legitimate projects here at the school to do them. And I'm not denying that. We really need a school that's not threatening to students, teachers, parents, and staff. And I hope that happens. There shouldn't be one student that feels that they're bullied or threatened or whatever, or will be if they say something, or a teacher, or I don't care who it is, should not happen. And lastly, we need transparent financial practices so that they are not questionable, and they're not, you know, you're not feeling mistrustworthy about what's going on. And so thank you for voicing my opinion, and I look forward to much better things in the future.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments? Okay, we'll have the superintendent and administrative report. I believe Colleen, you're first on these.
Oh, okay.
And Mr. Canini asked me to come and report to the board on our Strengthening Teacher and Leader Effectiveness Grant. As you know, we received the first round of the grant. We were just notified that we actually have been awarded round 2 of the grant, which was a completely separate award. We were awarded $111,750. And so what I've given you is an abstract of the second project, which basically is to continue to empower our teachers to lead change through professional learning communities. We've already started with data-driven instruction and the professional development around that, so that the information we get from students, whether it be on tests or essays or things they're doing for us in class, we actually analyze that data and use it then to make instructional decisions. We also will continue with our student-teacher placements and our partnership with SUNY Plattsburgh. That's working out very well. We have 3 student teachers right now in 16-week placements, 2 in the elementary school and 1 in the high school. We have 3 elementary teachers coming for the spring semester, and we're very excited about that. Dr. Dana and myself are doing a qualitative research study around the 16-week placement as part of the waiver for the State Education Department. And so we're busy collecting data on that and gathering information. The other thing that will continue is the professional development and teacher leadership opportunities. And we'll do that through several different things. We're continuing with our professional support providers, or the 8 teacher leaders that we identified under the first round. We'll continue with those. In addition to that, we'd like to add 2 peer evaluators or peer reviewers at each building level. And those people would be trained, and they would not be part of the APPR process. They would be solely a resource to help teachers if I have an observation coming up, or maybe I just have a lesson that I'd like another set of eyes to look at and give me feedback on. Those would be colleagues that would be trained and could come into my classroom and do that and provide that feedback and information to me. And we'll also provide an additional pathway to teacher leadership. Currently, teacher leadership can be achieved through national board certification or the Take One program. They're restructuring all of national board right now, so it'll be rolled out in modules instead of the way they do it now. And so we've also added the opportunity where under this grant we would basically scholarship up to 4 teachers who were interested in pursuing a teacher leader certificate through SUNY Plattsburgh, which is a new certificate area and degree area. So that would be another pathway. I also included, because we should be very, very proud of our staff and what they've accomplished, I included the information that we sent State Ed. They asked us for feedback about the STLE 1 grant. They came out here and spent a day with us, and they spoke with lots of different people and gathered lots of different information. They liked the projects that we were doing. They really felt very strongly that we had a really solid teacher leader program in place, and we're happy about that. So they asked us to gather quotes. So you have, after the abstract, you have 2 different documents. The first is, you all know me, could I just give them one quote? No. The first is kind of my overview of how I felt the STLE had helped our district. And it's kind of more like a blog post. And then I sent out a survey using our new Google Documents to all the teachers that were involved in any way, whether they be cooperating teachers or teacher leaders, our administrators, our student teachers. And we had 15 responses to that survey, and their responses are also collected in the documents that you have. And they answered 3 different questions, and all those all that information was sent on to State Ed as well. Do you have any questions for me?
These people that you're going to have come in, is this something that the school is going to be hiring them?
No, they're on staff already. What we did for our teacher leaders, our professional support providers, was that they could be there's a process. There's a nomination process where anybody in the building can nominate them, or they can self-nominate. We post the roles and responsibilities of the position. They can be nominated, and then once someone's nominated, they receive an email that invites them to apply to review again the roles and responsibilities and to apply for that position. Once we set a deadline, once all the applications are collected, actually the 2 building administrators, Tammy, Colleen, and I, blind scored them on a rubric and then ranked them. We compared our scores to make sure that they were kind of all together. Then we ranked them, and we selected our top 8 for our professional support providers. We'll do the same for our peer evaluators, but I think we'll have to rank them. We haven't really sat down and dealt with all the details, but I imagine we'll have to rank them because we'd like 2 from each building on 2 separate lists, and then take the top 2 from each list. They will receive a stipend under the grant, but they're already on-staff people, and it will be duties in addition to what they're doing now.
Thank you.
Sure.
Colleen has been very instrumental in getting both the STLE grant 1 and 2, and as a result, we cannot participate in the STLE grant 3. The Washington County schools that are doing the shared services and stuff, they are applying as a unit, because Fort Ann got the first one, and we did a lot of work with Fort Ann to try to get the best bang for our buck with the cognitive coaching and everything. So we shared, and when the people came here or at Fort Ann, we both contributed to what it cost to have them come. So, the third one, if it does go through, they've already agreed that they would allow us to participate. We'd have to pick up whatever the share was locally, but we would be able to participate. So it goes back to that shared services that we do everything together. But I know Colleen doesn't like to take the congratulations for this, but she was the reason we got $113,000 last year and $111,000 this year, and I want to thank her. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's it for me, so I want to go first.
I'll go because the microphone's closest to me and we'll pass it down. Okay, at the secondary, plans are underway for the second annual alumni panel. If you recall last year, just prior to the holiday break for Christmas, we had several students, there were 5 or 7 graduates who came back and spoke with our seniors. And the seniors had prepared questions, most of them about the day in, day out life of a student and what things they wish they had known prior to becoming a college student. And we had a cross-section of graduates, some who went to 2-year schools, some went to 4-year schools. We had one who was an ROTC student, so we had a nice cross-section. That panel will be happening on December 19th in the high school library. Mrs. Brennan, Mrs. Friars, and Mr. Akins are firming up the folks who are coming back to speak with our seniors about what to expect, kind of a day in the life of a college student, but also from the perspective of what students really should be doing as those last-minute preparation skills before they head out the door. Kind of the, do it differently than I did advice from people who are either in college or have graduated from college. Act with Respect Always, a week ago, we had a K-12 faculty meeting where all of our teachers heard the same message from a gentleman named Rich Johns. He was a teacher at Saratoga Springs and a coach at Saratoga, and he has a program that reinforces with students acting respectfully and civilly with one another, and realizing that what they say and they do has an impact not only on their own reputation, but it has an impact on others. Today, Coach Johns came in and worked with all of the students in the secondary, and I think Colleen is going to talk about the elementary specifically. But we had 7th and 8th graders meet with Coach Johns in an assembly, and then 9th through 12th graders also met. The messages for those two groups were very similar, not the same. He did tailor it according to age group, but it was a message about just conducting yourself with respect, not only for yourself, but for your peers, your teachers, your parents, and anyone who you encounter in your day. The 2-hour delay that we had in October, on October 25th, the professional support providers, who are those folks who were identified through the STLE grant, worked with teachers or groups of teachers on analyzing their data. We had early on in our superintendent's days in the beginning of the year, Steve Dana came and talked with the staff about data-driven instruction, and this was really data-driven instruction in practice. Teachers brought assessments or assessment results and took a look at trends, identified trends, whether that's a trend in a class period, whether that was a trend across a course, and then worked on how to modify their instruction based on the data that they were looking at. One of the things that came out at the secondary was the groups were, for instance, English and social studies worked together, math, science, technology worked together, and then art, PE, foreign language, and foreign language all worked together. And the math teachers were sharing with the science teachers that they had this new resource called Problematic. And Problematic is an online resource where teachers can go and get test questions for it. It's kind of the new age exam gen. It's a test bank where teachers can go and find not only Regents questions, but Common Core questions. And then they can modify those questions as well, which is different than exam gen. But what they found that in that program, there was instant feedback on students' performance. For instance, Mrs. Robinson has been using this since last year, at the end of last year. And she has some of her students submit their work online, and she gets instant results. She knows who missed what question. She can track what percentage of her students got it right, what percentage of her students got it wrong, which answer they picked if they didn't pick the proper one. And she's really used that to modify maybe the next day's instruction. If she's getting feedback that students are missing a concept. So the math teachers were speaking very highly of Problematic, and so then it kind of went like wildfire. Steve Butts and Megan Lozier came running down to my office, literally running to my office saying, we want this thing. So we've set up accounts for teachers in the secondary, and then I started hearing from some elementary folks, we heard you have this thing called Problematic, how do we get it? So it is catching on, and hopefully the teachers are finding it to be a very good resource for them. And the last piece for the secondary is one of those, I guess if you don't ask, you'll never know. Mr. Romack and Mr. Butts went down to the New York State Museum to pick up the displays, the items that are on display in the science wing currently. And while they were down there, they found out that there was a mastodon, or actually kind of a parts and pieces of 8 different mastodons that was in disrepair, and it had once upon a time been at Vassar. And I think it dates back to 1905 was when Vassar had it, and somehow the museum ended up with it. And Mr. Butts said, well, what are you going to do with that mastodon, or the parts of the mastodon? And he said, I don't know. And he said, can I have it? And they said, sure. So several hundreds of pounds later, moving it into the building, we have parts of a mastodon in Mr. Butts' room. And he is assembling it. Mr. Harrington's going to help repair parts of it because there are pieces that have been plastered, and kind of refurbish the parts and pieces. And Steve is designing some sort of a cart that we're going to put the parts and pieces of the mastodon on, so it can be shared throughout the school, that it can be kind of a mobile display rather than just putting it in one spot. He would love to bring it down to the elementary school. And when we get a chance to look at the completed display, even in disrepair, it's pretty impressive. Steve said in the past he used to bring a mastodon tooth down to the elementary, and the kids were like amazed by the tooth. So I'm kind of curious how they're going to react to the entire skull or the leg bones at the end. And so it's pretty impressive. So he asked, they said okay, so we now own parts of a mastodon.
It's actual size too, so the head without the tusks is probably as long as this table.
It's amazing.
Yes.
I actually, we're trying to figure out how to put it on a cart, so this might be an interesting engineering process.
Is this a cast, or is this the actual bones?
It's the actual bones. Some of them had been repaired and plastered, but it's the actual bones. There's a complete skull, both tusks. There's pretty much looks like a knee-down leg, and some vertebrae also. So it's pretty cool and massive.
Sounds like pretty big too.
Oh yeah. So that's it. Pretty. I know. Hard to call a mastodon.
Never had to call a mastodon. You'll notice that 2 of the topics on my report are exactly the same as 2 of the topics on Tammy's report. But what I will do is give a little bit of an elementary perspective, and also I would like to share with you regarding the data-driven instruction meetings, how important the role of the PSP providers has been and how useful it's been to us. So the 2-hour delay, in addition to other work that these, in my building, 4 individuals and 4 individuals in Tammy's building have done, they had to prepare to facilitate amongst their peers the data-driven instruction meetings and really help people to understand data-driven instruction. At the elementary, well, actually, we all met about a week afterwards and talked about what the takeaways were and what some of the comments were, and we really problem solved collaboratively as a K-12 group. And then again on Monday, the elementary staff met, not the elementary staff, but the 4 PSPs and myself met to prepare for a meeting which was held today, which was our follow-up meeting to our data-driven instruction 2-hour delay. So the point for me is this is work I would have never been able to do on my own. I mean, these are 4 more individuals in my building who have been trained in doing this really important work and really current work, and they've taken on the leadership role to go out, to be facilitators, to follow up, to gather information, bring it back, and to really act as leaders in large group meetings. They've done an excellent job. I can speak for this, I often say I can't speak for the secondary, but in this case I can definitely speak from a K-12 perspective. This has been wonderful. Thank you very much to Colleen for putting this together, because it's so much support for me as a building leader, so much support as we move, you know, into this age of Common Core and APPR and data-driven instruction. To really, for me, I was so grateful yesterday to have that meeting of 5, because I'm usually on my own at a meeting, and I had 4 other people who were involved in this to really help support and give some feedback and structure today's meeting. So again, thanks to Colleen for working so hard for that to go on another year, because it's definitely been useful, it's certainly important, and it's really helpful with professional development. And that's just the 1 2-hour delay. They've done a whole lot of other work as well. Today, Rich Johns met with the elementary kids. He had a meeting with students in grades 5 and 6, and then he had a meeting with grades 2, 3, and 4. I think the message was catered for the elementary staff. He focuses a lot on being honest. He focuses on being fair. One of the big pieces that he wants kids to take away is, he talks about your 99%. And your 99% is your character, your 1% is what you're wearing, your hair color, what you look like, what that outward appearance is. He compared that to the school. When he, you know, came to our school, he saw the brick and mortar, that's our 1%. The 99% is the kids and how the kids greeted him and how the kids behaved during his assembly. So I hope he really got that message across. And one thing you will notice is an awful lot of signage in the building. He's really generous with the banners and has kids sign it and asks the kids to be on his team. So we have a visual, you know, check in with kids. What's your 99 today? You know, and some days it's not quite 99, as I can say for myself. Last week on Thursday and Friday were our parent-teacher conferences. We did things a little bit differently this year. We sent report cards home a week in advance, or a few days in advance, depending on the grade level. We did that so parents could have like a preview at the report card and come in with questions prepared if needed. So far, the feedback's been pretty good on that change. There was some concern that first conference, that parents wouldn't come because that's, you know, where they get that first report card, and if they got it early, that they wouldn't show up. But attendance was very good, and several teachers commented that they could talk about, because the parents had some time to digest the report card, they could talk about other things, or extrapolate, go a little bit further with some of the discussions they wanted to have with parents, whether it be regarding behavior or specific work or staying after school. They didn't have to focus so much on reading and understanding the report card. And that's about it for me. Any questions?
The treasurer's report reflects the month of October. Again, this is a month that we are collecting taxes, so receipts outweigh the disbursements. The tax collection period closed November 15th at the district level. They were then submitted to the county to be re-levied with their county taxes. This year, surprisingly, we had an 89.26% collection rate. It's the highest since I've been here, and I like to think that's indicative of the economy, that maybe things are starting to turn around and people are starting to do better. There may not be any causal effect, but anyway. The capital project, you can see another large chunk of disbursements there. It is starting to wrap up. I hope to come close to submitting the final cost report, as long as everything goes smoothly. Is there any questions on the treasurer's report? So, in budgeting and property tax cap calculation news, the 2 retirement funds have come out with the contribution rate, projected contribution rates for next year. The good news is ERS, the employee retirement system, where you have most of your support staff, that is going to decrease from 20.9% to 20.1%. But for property tax cap implications, there will be no exemption. TRS is projecting from 17.25% to 17.75%. That is either a 1 or a 1.5% increase. So again, property tax cap calculation, there will be no exemption.
When do those go down?
There's usually a 3-year lag, 3 to 5 year lag with the, you know.
208 is rock bottom, right?
Right, yeah,
Shouldn't we
Wall
start-
Street.
Shouldn't we see
Well,
more?
Wasn't there a bit of a bubble there? I mean, we did well, but then we took a slide probably around 2010, 2011. So I don't think we completely are back to where we want to be. But they move up faster than they move down, that's for sure.
Yeah, just another year or two before.
I'd like to think so, yeah. I'd like to get back to the early 90s where they were less than 1%, 2%. And that's all I have.
Tom?
We had an open house to look at the completed, or nearly completed $8 million project on October 19th. We expected a large crew. Unfortunately, only 9 people go through the building. We had as many volunteers ready to give tours as we had people come through the building. I'd like to thank Kate and Colleen McDonald again for taking charge, supplying food, posters. I gave a couple of tours. One of them was to my wife, so I mean, we didn't really get out in public that much. It's unfortunate. I would suggest that those of you who didn't, take a look. Take a look at the new cafeteria. Take a look at the new gym. As I think I said last month, the gym is worth the price of admission by itself. It's pretty spectacular. The kitchen is solving all sorts of problems for us. And then all sorts of safety things. Actually, we gave tours which included the energy performance contract stuff. You need to walk through the building and go like this, and lights go on. And then when you turn around, the lights have gone off already. It's kind of it, and they're trying to explain the sensors to people. It's kind of a neat thing. So please take a look around you, and the building committee will be putting another project before everybody. So and the building committee, by the way, is composed of community members, faculty, board members, administration, and our architectural firm. So we have a lot of input and a lot of guidance to the project as it progresses. And we're very proud of the project that's being wrapped up. So please take a look around in that. This afternoon I got a music video in my email from Mrs. Madison. Thank you. Malachi Best is at it again. He's a talented young fellow. I would suggest everybody in the school district go to sandywilburmusic.com and watch the latest video, which is based on the Gettysburg Address. They also have the one that he did 2 years ago. He's got the same talented 4 young ladies singing with him. He's got another young fellow doing the rap. I admire that kid. He's great. And the 4 sopranos, they're going to go far too. They're good, talented kids. Good looking kids.
We'll put the link on the website.
Okay. Everybody knows we have holes in this table up here. We have seats to fill. We have the first vote coming up to replace one of those on the 3rd, and I would hope everybody comes out to vote. It's the usual 12 to 8, and the vote will be in the cafeteria. Is that correct? In the auditorium. I'm sorry, the auditorium. And that's it for me.
Paul?
I don't have any committees to report on. I just want to take a moment to also thank Colleen McDonald for bringing that fantastic sum of money to the district. It sounds, by all accounts, like it's being put to good use. So that's fantastic, and hopefully there'll be more where that came from. Thank you, Colleen.
Vince, do you have anything to say?
No, nothing else.
Alrighty, I have one
Oh,
more thing.
I'm sorry, maybe everybody's noticed the bags. The board appreciation was the last week in October? And the beginning of November, so as a token gift, the board will receive each of those. It's a mug and each, and we thank you for your service. The township and what you've done.
Thank you, everybody.
This is so we can stay warm in the room next month. We're gonna have hot tea. Thank
You
you.
got it
Thank
written
you.
down.
You got your own township, yeah.
Oh.
Sorry about that. Okay, first of all, I'd like to congratulate the football team. They had a really great year, and they won the Section 2 championship. Also, the girls soccer team should be congratulated. They made it to the sectional. They played the first game of the sectional, or I'm not sure exactly how these teams work, but anyway, they lost by 1 point in double overtime. So I think that's pretty spectacular. There was something put on the board out in front of school about the boys football team. And I had a community member come up to me and say, why didn't they do something about the girls? Even though they didn't win the sectionals, they certainly got way up there. I think maybe from now on, any of our teams that do really well like that should have recognition somehow. And I think that would be a good thing to do from now on. I have a concern over something. Last month, the business manager stated that, per the auditor, we should be reviewing warrants monthly. Now, last month, she called Tom to do this, even though Tom and I are both on the committee. And when I called her to find out when the next audit committee meeting was, she told me we no longer have an audit committee. And she refused to have anything to do with this committee because she felt that she had been insulted when she was told that it was illegal for us to have just 2 members on the committee, that we do need 3.
Lillian, we have a charter that says we should have 5 members on the board that was adopted in 2008, and I don't think we've ever followed the charter. We're in the process of doing a policy change.
I
That's why.
understand that. Okay.
One further correction, I called that.
You called her about the warrants?
Warrants, reviewing the warrants. I thought it should be done and I did it.
Okay, the audit, well, from what she told me the other day, you know, that there was no longer an audit committee, which I was pretty surprised at. The audit committee was formed by the board after a vote, and I don't think that it can be just dissolved. And I really think that this is part of her job to be an advisor on this committee. The problem of the 3 members has been brought up multiple times, and within the last year, and still nothing has been done about it. I have a copy here of the education law, section 2116, and it has to do with audit committees, and it says you have to have at least 3 members. If anybody wants to look at this, feel free.
Lillian, weren't you part of the policy committee?
Yes, I was.
Then this is something that we've discussed at length at the policy committee. I don't understand why this is not the forum to have this discussion. I don't understand.
Also,
You've been part of the committee
I
from its
understand that,
inception.
and I have brought it up several times that we need to
Well,
do
hold on.
something about it.
I know, but when you say we need to do something about it, it's the board
The
needs to
board
do
needs to,
something.
exactly.
We're waiting for a motion. We're waiting for some sort
Well,
of a
that's
discussion.
down
on it.
lower in my thinking.
Okay.
Okay.
But maybe that, maybe the complaint should have come in a different venue rather than publicly complaining about something. You're making it sound like that's the administrator's fault. It's board members were bringing up the issue. It's the board's job to change it. Actually, I think it's specifically, according to our old policy, is it the board president's job?
Yes,
I mean, but again, it's not about laying the blame. The point is, let's make a motion. Let's not complain that it hasn't been
I
done.
wasn't trying to lay the blame any place, it's just that
I
nothing has been done about
I
it.
misunderstood. We haven't done anything about it.
Right, and I do believe that I did say that. And I believe that the board should do something about it, and, now I forget where I was. Anyway, I don't think that we should wait any longer to do this. I feel that it really needs to be done. And, so I make a motion that we advertise this week for the audit committee, and giving anyone who is interested 2 weeks to apply. And I don't know if that's standard, 2 weeks is long enough. I'm not really sure. And then we can make a decision at the next board meeting, and if this means that we have to have a special meeting to interview these people or whatever, I think we should do it. So I do make the motion that we, put something in the paper to advertise for this. Do I have a second?
I will second it for discussion. Are we gonna do this under the old policy or the new policy?
As far as I know, and according to Kate, there was no old policy.
Well, then we haven't adopted the new policy.
No, we haven't adopted, but according to the law, it says we need 3 people on it. And this is, like I said, has been brought up multiple times, and nothing has been done about it. And if it was the president's obligation to do that, it still hasn't been done. And I think that it should be done now. It could take another 3 to 6 months to get the policies read 3 times and voted on, and
Vince, can we hear your recommendation on this matter?
The policy that Lillian's referring to was a guideline. The one that the district adopted in 2008 was a 5-member audit committee that would be appointed on an annual basis by the board president. As far as I know, it's never been in existence, and when I took over here, I was not even aware that there was a charter because it wasn't in the board policies.
I thought the charter said 3. That's my mistake, and if you think we need 5, that would be fine, but I think we should do something.
The current board policy, what we worked on was to try to mirror what the commissioner had recommended.
Right, which was the 3rd, right?
And I thought when we were at the policy committee meeting that we agreed that we wouldn't do anything until the new one was adopted. So that's, I'm confused.
I don't remember discussing that, to tell you the truth. I know that we did the policy, you know.
Is the district in any kind of exposure, or are we in any kind of liability or danger by not having the 5 or the 3?
We have an internal auditor that goes through, the internal claims auditor that goes through the warrants. And what the audit committee was doing was getting together and making sure that everything was okay with that. And if there were other items that needed to be discussed, it was discussed. So I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
No, I just remember also a conversation in your office. We mentioned that when the state comptroller comes in, which they'll be coming in tomorrow, that they would review it as well and give their guidance. And they're coming in tomorrow. So until I sent it to him via email a week ago, and he said he was going to check with his office, and when he came in, he would, speak to us regarding that. But that was also agreed upon.
What was agreed upon?
When there was a meeting in Vince's office.
That you were gonna wait for the controller? I do remember that we did discuss that.
Lillian, your main concern is that we're not in full compliance with
Right.
that item. That's your main concern.
And the fact that it's been brought up so many times and it just gets being pushed down the road.
But I'm trying to get an understanding of what your concern is.
Yeah, I think that.
Other than the fact that we're not currently in compliance, we're in the process of becoming compliant. Other than that, do you have any more emergent worries about any actual effects on the state of our finances?
No, except for the fact that this has been brought up multiple times.
But I believe I think you're kind of, and again, I don't mean to put words in your mouth, you're making it sound like it's being brought up multiple times and nothing's happening. And I think what we just heard from Vince and Beth is that we're moving towards where we need to be moving. And we're doing so cautiously, we're making sure to do our homework on this. We've implemented the policy. you know, it isn't fully in place yet. We're dealing with the comptroller, who's the person who's most qualified to do this. So with the exception of actually not at this point meeting the full letter of that document, we're well on our way. So, you know, I'm comfortable with that, especially since you're not seeing any other emergent issues. It's just a matter of being in full compliance. I think if you go through every single one of our policies, as we did, there's a number of areas where we're not 100% but you can't just flip a switch, just because, you know, I think we're well on our way there.
Well, but like I said, my concern is that this has been going on for at least a year, and it's been brought up multiple times, and I know we did the policy, but we did lots of policies, and they're not all, you know, most of them, we didn't even have a policy, is what Kate told us the other day, that there was no policy before, that it was just according to the charter, and we basically did it from the charter.
I would suggest that we wait and see what the controller has to say, and then we could easily catch up in a month or two. But we also, is that policy coming up at some point?
I plan on putting it on next month.
So that's another, that's 4 months from now, before that will be official, is that?
February would be the third reading.
Okay. I guess I would see what the controller says, and if he or she, the person from that office flips out, then I think we have to do something. Otherwise, I don't see any financial disaster on the horizon, and I think we can sit on it for a little bit longer.
And what are we going to do about the,
We can review the warrants as I did last month, and that's basically 99% of what we did as a committee was go through the warrants. It was done.
it hasn't been
I
done
think-
in well over a month?
And I meant to do it, and I haven't called up that.
But it shouldn't be just you doing it.
Well,
We're
let's
supposed to
get
have a
together.
committee.
Let's get together and do it.
Okay, that's fine.
I think I said in the email, you're always welcome to come in and review the warrants.
Right, I know.
Each committee or as an individual board member, I've never denied access to any of the meetings.
Oh, I didn't say that you did deny access, that I never mentioned that. But I just feel that, you know,
Do we
you're
have to
saying
do
that
it-
it
Do we
was.
have to do it together, or can you go in and I go in at separate times? I guess that's a question, because it would be more convenient for everybody to just do it, and then report that we did it.
I don't know, when we were on a committee, we went in together. When I was on a
Okay, well,
committee
then
with Howard, we went in together.
Let's schedule a meeting. Okay, we'll do that with Beth after.
All right.
Okay.
So the motion on the table is to put this into the paper and, get people that are interested. So either the motion passes or it doesn't pass.
It's a called motion.
I asked for a second on it.
I seconded it for discussion.
Okay.
That's why we had the discussion.
All right. So now we have to vote on it. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed?
Nay.
Okay.
But I do recommend you bring this up next month.
Because we should have more input next
I
time.
brought it up this month because I did bring it up last month. Okay, the third thing I have to deal with is, it's been brought to my attention that my residency has been questioned. And I'd like to know who and why anyone would ask this. Anybody have any comments on that? Okay. If anyone really wanted to know the truth, they could have called me and asked me. And I would have told them that, yes, I'm still a resident of Cambridge. I have informed Beth and Kate and Vince and anyone else that I've dealt with, that I have been going to Cahoes. My mother has had a stroke. She's 96 years old, and she's had several strokes. And my brother and my sister and myself are taking care of her because we don't leave her alone anymore. I'm presuming that's where this residency thing came in. Anyway, to stop any rumors, and if anybody has any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. But I want to make it perfectly clear that yes, I am still a member of Cambridge, and I still live here. That's all I have to say. Alrighty. Getting on old business, policy reading, the second reading, mission statement, etc.
It's just the second reading, there's no vote or anything,
No.
go to the top of the next page.
Okay.
There's quite a few.
And then the budget committee. It was suggested by, Jim Dexter that we not have a budget committee because we were going to be looking for a superintendent. And I think maybe we should go back to having a budget committee. And anybody that, applied to be on it, I think that we should talk to them. And I mean, it's probably kind of late this year because things have progressed as far as the budget goes, I'm sure. But I think that we should definitely, you know, have this for next year. Is there any other comments about the budget committee?
I was at the lunch with Carrie, Jim Dexter, and Jay Berman, and Carrie was the one that suggested not to have the budget committee this year. That came out of an email with our lawyer, that everybody had agreed that we wouldn't have a budget committee. So, just to clarify.
Alright, well, hopefully we'll have one next year. Okay, new business. So this is where we want to consider the approval of the consent agenda as listed in the consent agenda for personnel and the consent agenda for new business.
This consent agenda is on 1.5 in the packet, and it's the second bullet from the bottom that has been removed from this consent agenda to the addendum. So what you will be approving is the first 5 and the last one. So the second one from the bottom, the coaching positions, will be removed from this consent agenda and will be addressed in the addendum. But the rest of the consent agenda for personnel and new business are on page 1.5.
Is there any discussions?
Who seconded?
Oh, I'm sorry. Do we have a second on that?
Second.
Are there any discussions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so then we go to the discussion, for the
Communication plan.
consent agenda personnel number 1 is the girls' basketball, the wrestling, the cheerleading, is on the agenda.
You're moving to the addendum, item T.
Okay.
Or, I'm sorry,
No.
it's the consent agenda, item S1.
Okay.
On the addendum, the first item, S1 for the consent agenda.
Oh, all right. The consent, consider approval of the consent agenda as listed in the consent agenda for personnel and the consent agenda for new business. And it's broken into 2 parts, and the first part is the girls' basketball, wrestling, cheerleading, unpaid volunteers, and the appointment of Kara Fitzgerald as drama club advisor. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the second personal is a recommendation for the board to file for the following coaches for boys basketball for JV, 8th grade and 7th grade. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, are there any discussions? Yes, I have a discussion. I'm gonna be abstaining from this because 2 of these, all 3 of them are relatives. Tyler?
Really, and I think in a normal situation, that would be good just to avoid any kind of perception, but I think if you don't vote for this, then we can't approve them, and I really would like to approve them. We need your vote tonight. Tom, do you have any objections, even though they're?
No, I said that
Well, I
totally
would-
at the agenda meeting.
I was told that when I first got on the board, if there was any conflict, that we should be abstaining.
Even the
That is what I'm
perception, that's
saying.
right, and I completely respect that. But
I
I'm
think
just
we're also
saying,
both
this
saying in
is
public that this is an exceptional situation.
and I think it's crystal clear that there's no conflict here.
Well, that's how I feel about it.
All right, well, I'm not-
The most we can do is come back next month when there's gonna be another board member here, and we can vote on it then, and it will go through, and it's not any different than when Vince hires a teacher the end of August, and we don't vote on it until the middle of September, the teacher starts teaching anyway. Is that
If
true?
this gets tabled, will that be?
That's
all
fine.
right? They'll
They'll,
still do it?
yeah, they will remain
Fair
doing
enough.
what they're doing.
Okay, so it's not gonna hurt the kids any?
Or the individuals.
No.
Okay.
As long as they're aware of why it got tabled, they're, well.
So I move we table this to next month. Board member.
It can be tabled for,
You need a second, you got a second?
Well, we need to, it was up for,
Did you get a second on it? I don't think it was ever officially seconded.
We had a second, we started discussion, I've introduced the amendment to table it to next month.
I mean, that is fine with me if that's legal.
that's fine, yeah, we can do that. But you still gotta, have to vote on the table.
Yep.
Right.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
No, then you can't, then it's not
You
tabled.
can vote to table.
Oh,
Just
this
table.
is the table thing
That's
we're
right.
doing. Oh, I thought this was the actual vote, okay. I vote to table it till next one. All right, and then we have to vote on the communication plan. And that was the presentation that was given last month, right? And who is going to be on this? Because when the presentation was given, I was under the impression that maybe the people that gave it weren't actually going to be on the committee.
That's still to be determined whether or not you want the same people to continue or other interests.
So they'll have another meeting on this, right?
Well, the plan is up for adoption now from their,
However, this is, I think it's fantastic what they've done so far, but I'm worried about the use of the word plan here. Because these questions, for example, will there continue to be a communications committee? That's not addressed in the plan. So we don't know that. We don't know if we're approving one or not, or what have you. We don't know if they've disbanded or if we're gonna keep going. There's nothing in this document that says, here's what will be done, and here's who's going to do it. It's more of a declaration of, not even really intent. So that's my only issue with it, is I don't think it should be called a plan.
Okay, my issue with it was, they gave what they had done, and they want to form a committee, from what I've gotten out of it. And I thought that, if we approve the communication plan, then they would form a committee and go forward from there. Yeah,
Naomi, can you help us?
Yes, I think I can.
I hope so.
We made the plan without addressing the issue of what comes next. And in the presentation that we gave, it included advisory or counseling or whatever, that the board needed to make a decision as to what was gonna come next. The committee, which we called a group, I think, the committee didn't exactly disband, but we were done with our job, according to what had been decided by the board and the charge that had been given to us directly. And without, from the group's perspective, without the board's direction as to what should happen next, we were done, like I said at the very beginning. One of the possibilities would be that you all would configure a group that would take the plan, I don't know what the better word is, but take the plan to the next level.
Would be a committee?
Well, it would be something that would advise you all as to what, what the priorities were in terms of communication, target groups that were at the top of the list. We had sort of done that prioritization based on input from the public with the survey that we had done. but it still was up to, we felt that it was still up to you all to kind of put your, not so much seal of approval, but to say, yeah, that really matters and that's important and we want that to be addressed. And, you know, then since there were board members on the group, it worked well in terms of developing the plan because they were kind of a touchstone for us not going off on some crazy quest. At the same time, the next phase would need that too. I mean, if you all said, we think that the farmers are the highest priority for, oh, don't get insulted, anybody, I love farmers. But the highest priority in terms of a group to target for communication, great. It doesn't show up that way in our charts, but that's your prerogative. And we didn't feel like it was our prerogative to do that, so we did need to do that. So that's why the plan doesn't say, this is what's gonna happen next. We had no clue what was gonna happen next. Does that help or make it worse?
I don't know. You know, what do you guys think?
I'm trying to think back to the original charter for that committee. Vince, maybe you can help us out. The original, we decided to have a committee, and the goal of the committee was to
I believe develop this plan.
develop a plan. This, I'm gonna call this an exploratory statement. I think you guys did some fantastic background research, and you guys came together with some suggestions for strategies in terms of how to make decisions as to what's, to make a plan. But, I mean, I guess what we need to do is keep the communication committee functional and continue until there's a plan, is what I would think. And by plan, I just mean, here's a you know, a list of, what I'd like to see is a list of steps. You know, here's what we need. I mean, for example, I mean, there's a ton of questions. You asked the question, do we keep the committee up? Probably we should. But then the question is, you know, are we talking about, are we gonna need additional resources, or are we gonna try to do this with existing resources? You know, so that's a huge decision.
I guess I'm a little confused, because I thought one of the things we asked the advisory committee to do is, do we need a communications committee? And that wasn't answered.
Oh, we never were told to ask that
I
question.
thought that was one of the prime, I don't know how it got lost. I thought, because this was an advisory committee to tell the board what to do about communications, and one of the things was, do we need a communication committee or is it handled in another way?
Yeah,
But I think that would be
didn't
part
come
of,
into our discussion.
that would be part of the plan. Once you have a plan,
Maybe.
that plan might say, well, we should have a communications committee. So right now, we're still a little shy of a plan, I think.
I think that you answered the questions last month when you presented that I think that we do need a committee for this. And I was hoping that you people, this is my own personal opinion, that you people would form the committee and then bring stuff to the board on what you think is the most important thing and how you plan on doing it.
And I think we took it from the other side, which was this lays out what we learned from the community, what we learned from the literature, what we had identified as a model for addressing communication. And now we needed you all to give us the next level of direction so that we didn't spin our wheels with coming up with things that you all, we were recommending for you to do, just to have you say, no, we don't want that. But on the other hand, maybe, I mean, I don't mean with all due respect, as some people say, maybe you don't know what you don't know or what you want to have happen, and the process of a committee presenting to you some ideas will help to formulate that. So that's another way of looking at it. And I don't know what's best. I just know that we made the decision to do what our exploratory was about.
Exploratory statement. It seems like we're playing a little bit of ping pong with, well, what should we do?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly
Yeah.
true. But from my position being on the committee and being just a good little doobie, you guys are fearless leaders, and so it's up to you to figure out and wrestle with it, not up to us. But I can argue the other side of that if you want me to.
It seems like they should offer us some concrete suggestions on how to implement and utilize data that you collect. Where do we go? Okay, we have a need for communications with the community. How do we do that? How do we do it? I'm sort of a practical kind of guy. How do you do it? You've hashed this over for a year. Okay, how do we get these ideas? Now that we know you've convinced yourselves and convinced us that we need to do this, how do we give us some ideas, give us something to work with? Because I think we agree, communication, everybody's been saying that for the last 4 years, we need to communicate to the community better. And you guys documented that in fact is 100% true. Now we need to know, okay, you must have talked about how it should be done. Do we need a committee? Do we need just groups of people? Is it all dumped on the board, on the administrators? How does it work?
Well, I guess if I were on the board, I would say, okay, we're gonna approve this exploratory statement, and now we want the committee to reconfigure, rejigger itself, and give us the next steps. That's what I would
like
do.
a really good idea. Second that.
Can I just say, as a participating member on the committee, is that one of the other things that we came up against was we started to brainstorm like different strategies and things that we could do under the plan. Most of them require resources. So as a board, you really need to decide before we kind of go on a wild goose chase, what do you want us to do it within the existing structure? Are you willing to contribute some resources to the communication? Is there kind of,
Are you talking about
money?
Financial?
Yeah, like upgrading the website. I mean, we talked about a lot of different things,
Yeah.
but some of them require funding. So, like, we could investigate lots of different things, but I think it would be very helpful from my perspective that, and as we talked about it, if we had kind of a guidance or guidelines about how you're looking to have this achieved, so that we don't bring in everything from nothing to the moon, because that requires a lot of time and a lot of research and a lot of development. So it'd be nice if it was a little more focused.
I disagree. Great debate here, this is all you want. And I don't totally disagree at all. But I think there's lots of things that can be done that would facilitate and promote positive communication that either build on what's already being done here, and also that would not cost any money. And I would think that the not the charge necessarily, but the mental attitude should be, what can we do in the short term that's not gonna cost an arm and a leg? And what can we do that assesses the real value of things that are gonna cost you a lot of money? Because there's a lot of things that cost a lot of money that then, get taken to the recycling center. I mean, I'm making that up, kind of, but you know what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
Technology and expensive this and that is not necessarily.
3 months later.
I mean, people want to be talked to. That doesn't cost anything, it's just an attitude. And how do we foster that attitude? I have some ideas, but I'm not sharing them tonight.
So
Anyways, you get.
Do we
you
still
get my
have,
drift?
the committee still seated, or is it?
We haven't been disbanded as far as I know.
Right, that's true. That's true. We haven't been disbanded, but we have not met since.
All right, so let's share what we discussed today with the committee and see if there are some more specific, concrete examples of what can be done better with no additional resources.
Well, you see, the advantage of having community members on the committee is that you guys have a feel for what's possible, what's really possible, and you're not gonna go hog wild and suggest something that's gonna, well, yeah, it's only gonna cost $100,000 to do this, but it's gonna be really good when we do it. No, we're not gonna do that, so I think we put some trust in you to begin with, and I don't have any problem continuing that trust, to come up with some practical ideas. And if you come up with something and say it's gonna cost us $500 a year, $1,000 a year to hire somebody to do something, we can discuss that, if you think it's valuable.
Yeah. And by the way, I did put together a list of ideas as to what might be done the day for the presentation that I did. But I'm not sure it even got distributed to you all. I think Carrie hung on to it, yeah. It wasn't rocket science, and it wasn't brilliant or anything either, but it was doable and cheap. They were doable and cheap, so.
Is there a way to?
Peggy had her hand up. She was
I
part
wanted
of
to
the
say,
committee.
we
Yeah, she
did, we
was.
did get the next steps when we were all board members. I was a board member, we did
Oh,
get
you got
that.
it?
Yes,
Good.
and, there were subcommittees that we talked about, ideas, website, that's where Colleen's coming up with the extra resources. But I agree with you that there's things that we should do that won't cost anything to start. So I would be interested in staying on that committee because I think communication is something we can always improve upon, so. And I know when we were finishing up, there was only a few of us that were really
But we were great.
deeply in the committee, so. And
Sure,
one of
but-
those things that was really important was
Yeah.
the website, we talked about just doing some little tweaking on there. But, yeah, so you did have good steps, and I saw them.
Yeah, good.
So do we have to act on something, or can we just ask the committee to continue on and keep us informed with further deliberations? I mean,
Well, you need to approve the plan.
There.
I mean, the exploratory
Why?
statement.
All right, it's an
Why?
action
Yes.
figure,
No, hold on,
so
hold
we
on.
have
I
to.
wanted, I'm happy to do it, but
That's a validation of the work that the committee done, and it's and it's a validation of the first phase closure and moving on.
I'm happy to validate what you guys have done and the time you put in, absolutely.
By approving the plan
By
or just?
approving the exploratory
The
stage.
Which will be short nickname for the plan.
Great.
I just wanna say one other thing, we really should approve the plan because we asked people when they voted last what we could do better. We had a survey for people filled the surveys out, we looked at the data on the surveys, and so that validates what people were asked to do last election.
I absolutely am happy to validate that work.
So-
I just worry about voting on something because there's implications of things that need to be done next. And there's just, I've read it a couple times, and I just don't see what's in there that's next step. But I think we've agreed that we're just gonna continue with the committee. And work on coming up with more concrete suggestions and maybe taking let's see what we can do without.
How to implement what you found, basically.
Yeah,
Because
And
that's really the nuts and bolts.
we know
of it.
what
And that's
people
we're- That's
think
what we're involved with. is-
should be the priority, and, you know, I don't think it takes a lot of money. And I just wanted to say that I don't think, and I don't think anybody on the committee thinks that that plan was perfect or spectacular or brilliant or anything like that. We think it was our best effort and that it was based on solid research and that it reflected the feelings of at least some subset of the population of people who vote in this district. So I just, I mean, you're not gonna hurt my feelings if you.
And you don't have to be defensive, it was a good document, it's just the beginning. It's
I'm not defensive.
Well, you sound.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, so we have to recommend the board approve the communication plan.
I say,
We've already had the discussion.
And we've already had a discussion. All those in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
And can I do one more thing that the committee, I don't know if this has to be an action thing, that the committee should meet again and bring us some more concrete stuff on what they feel are the priorities.
We'll figure that
Okay. Alrighty. Okay, the next thing is, Sequoia, and it's a $100,000 project, and this is done every year. And,
This basically says that there's no environmental impact on the $100,000 if we use the $100,000 project.
okay,
It's a secret review.
Did you make the motion?
okay, you're gonna second it. I just have one thing that I asked this before, but these people weren't here. The installation of security entrance, this is the one that's down by the main entrance of the school.
We
And I,
will finally be able to cut the hole in the wall because the chase is not structural.
right,
So they've determined that, so yes, that
so
should be
this
functional.
was supposed to be in the $8 million project. It was taken out of that and something else was put in. So now we're doing this in the
This is a $100,000
$100,000
project.
project.
If I may, it wasn't taken out because the installation of the window was always on the district. So no, it was not taken out, and something put in its place.
This security entrance was part of the $8 million project. I think it
Right.
was on us, the district, to cut the hole in the wall. And when we found out that the hole will go through right where the old exit of the building was, we had to make sure that it was structurally sound. That's what's taken so long.
Okay.
So, yes,
It's
it was
more
on us.
expensive and the fiscally sound way goes to eliminate.
So the installation of the security entrance wasn't in the $8 million project?
It
Yeah.
was, but the portion of cutting through the wall
Was not.
was not, that was always on the district. And when we found how expensive it was because it wasn't structurally sound, we said, well, then we should put it in a $100,000 project to get 80 cents on the dollar, rather than pay dollar for dollar out of the general fund.
Okay, all right. And the intruder locks, those are the locks that. the
You
new
can lock
locks
from
that
the
all
inside and
work.
the outside.
Okay. And install the new doors, what doors are those? Are
There's
that-
some bathroom doors that have been, starting to, well, I don't wanna say destroyed, but they're being held together with, screws and bolts, I don't know, there's some
Okay.
interior doors
All right,
that,
but this isn't the main entrance door?
No.
no, those are
Okay.
sound.
All right, okay. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Before we go on, every outside door is now new, is that correct?
Every outside door is new.
Unless they were already relatively new with
Yeah.
giant swings.
The ones that are out back, they were fairly new, so they weren't replaced. All of the
So
old
they're
structure.
new, they're new or near new.
Yes.
Okay, we have to appointment of personnel, Heather Neto as a secondary math teacher. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I recommend the board approve change order EC-01 with Harold Kuhn for an increase in the amount of $323.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Recommend the board approve change order EC-03 with Castleman, and this is an increase in the amount of $11,992. Anybody second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I recommend the board approve change order EC-04 to Castleman, and this is an increase of $20,941 for a sump pump power boiler shutdown and replacement of transformer.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Recommend the board approve change order EC-05 to Castleman. This is a decrease in the amount of $353 for damage done to wire and conduit.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Recommend the board approve the change order GC-08 with Bunkoff. This is a decrease in the amount of $1,902.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Recommend the board approve the change order GC-09 with Bunkoff, and this is a decrease in the amount of $2,312.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Recommend the board approve change order GC-10 with Bunkoff for a decrease in the amount of $3,727. Second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Recommend the board approve a change order HC-02 with the G-Series. This is an increase in amount of $13,000 for replacement of existing ventilator and bookshelves in room 32.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Recommend the board approve the change order HC-03, and this is, mechanical for a decrease in amount of $690. Have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Recommend the board approve the following resolution, be it resolved that Cambridge School District hereby establish the following as a standard workday for appointed positions, and will report the following days worked in New York State and local employees' retirement system based on the timekeeping system records or the records of activities maintained and submitted to these officials to the clerk of the body.
Second.
I'm not even sure what that is.
You want to explain?
It's basically a housekeeping resolution so that when the comptroller comes in tomorrow, appointed officials, I think in the past there's been abuse. And so that their standard day, and it'd probably be just Kate and myself as district clerk and treasurer, that we're not trying to submit for retirement service years for these appointed positions. So basically we're saying we're doing things by the book.
This came out of a few years ago. There were lawyers and doctors saying that they worked for the school district and were only part-time employees and got retirement benefits through the employees' retirement system. So this is what, the appointments.
Right,
The
so that
appointments that
we
we have.
can't, like, increase our service,
Can't double dip.
double dip basically.
Well, that's good. Do I have a second?
You do.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Recommend the board approve the budget transfer in the amount of $15,674 to cover additional ESL costs. And a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And the other action thing we have is,
He is the first reading.
Regarding the first reading, I just noticed that in the first, the student policy goals, right at the beginning, we have the old mission statement in there.
Oh, good catch. 'Cause I don't,
That
yeah,
looks good.
that was a long time ago. All right, so 5,000 change.
Right, it's right on the first page.
Okay.
Just to remind the community, this was, the policies was done over almost 2 years. The committee worked with board members, faculty, staff, and a lot of work, a lot of fun, a lot of soda, some coffee, and cupcakes at the end, right?
so the other action thing that we have to do is the thing with DJ, right? That's an action thing?
On the addendum, under new business, discussion about filling the board seats.
There's one more change order, item T,
Where is it?
item T on the agenda.
Oh, before that, you got R, above that. Discussion of the board, filling the board seats.
Okay. Let me take care of the easy one.
Which one are we gonna do?
T.
T, okay, recommend the board
So that's the,
approving change order of SC02 to VMJR for the remaining contractual allowance in the amount of $31,176. And this is
I'll
coming back
second
to
it.
us?
I'll
This
second
is
it.
coming back to us, yes.
Okay. You second? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, now we have,
R on the top of that page. Above the two consent agendas,
oh,
9 new business, R, discussion about filling vacant board seats.
I guess I watched it. Where is it?
Right.
On the addendum. Item R.
Oh, discussion about filling vacant board seats.
This would be Carrie's position.
Oh, okay.
We had a discussion the last time of how to fill the other position.
Right.
So this is the same basic decision that needs to be made, whether or not it will be an appointment, another election or what.
Okay, does anybody have anything they want to say about it?
Well, I started out the last discussion with my suggestion that we have a vote. I think that is the fairest thing for the community. The unfair thing is that we dragging people out again. But we do have, the building committee has to meet to discuss this, but we do have a capital project vote coming up. And it was originally scheduled, we thought we would have it in February, March. And I'm going to suggest to the board that if in fact we okay a vote for the vacant seat, that we combine it with the capital project vote. If everybody sees the wisdom in that, if they don't, then we don't. But I don't like dragging people out, and there is a certain expense with having elections anyway.
When does this have to be done by? It has to be done in 90 days?
From, yeah, I believe it's February 4th, that's what I'm trying, I thought I had the paper with me, and I can't find it. Is it February 4th is 90 days, so we have to make a decision. Or Jim Dexter will appoint in December, or in February 4th.
Well, I think that we have to go with that. I think, someone brought up last month that it's really better if the people get to vote on it. So, I think it should be voted on.
And can we combine, the capital project votes are just as costly as board votes. So, yeah, that makes sense to combine the two, at least.
Well, I
save us
think the
that.
board would have to, or the, building
Yeah,
committee would
assuming-
have to meet.
Assuming they
The
were.
building
okay with
committee
that.
has a meeting scheduled for
Next Monday, I believe. Do we want to approve February 4th?
We can wait until the next, I just counted back from February 4th, 45 days would be, because that's when we had to advertise, would be December 21st. We have another board meeting prior to that on the 17th, I believe.
So we can,
We can wait till December to get the resolution from our attorneys.
okay, so we can postpone this till next month.
If you're gonna do an election, though, that we can get started on making sure that we have the paperwork and everything with the resolution, so we can vote on that next month. Is
Okay.
that the way?
Well, I think as this gentleman here pointed out last month, that it should be the people.
Not a problem. I will get in touch with the lawyers tomorrow.
No,
And that-
no, absolutely, I think that's the right way to go,
Yeah.
especially if we can get a two-per.
Yeah, so the building committee has to make that decision on Monday.
Right. So we can postpone this whole thing until next month, right?
We can adopt a resolution next month to set an election date.
All right, I think that's what we should do. Okay, well, there is one more thing. Recommends the board accept a donation of $1,000 from Donald J. Harrington for the purchase of boys' basketball jackets. Do I have a
Second.
All those in favor?
What's this all about, I guess?
He did a fundraiser on his own. I mean, he did a chicken barbecue, because that's what he's famous for. And they, he collected $1,000, and he wanted to buy boys' basketball jackets. And I think it was Deb Lauber that told him that he couldn't do that it had to go through the board. And then Vince told me that he had to send a letter and the money before we could approve it.
Yep, and I talked to Tim today, and he said it's gonna be a team jacket, so the jacket will be returned in at the end of the season, so that next year the students can use it again. So that's why it's gotta come through us as opposed to the student activity
That
account.
was my next question.
Okay.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
So, do we have a second on that?
We do.
Okay, and all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I think that's it.
Quick executive session.
Okay, is there any other public comment?
They approved the last
That was just a consent.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
We understand. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, it wasn't, okay. Alrighty. So now we have to adjourn this and go into executive session.
It'll be a brief meeting.
You do that second.
I'm sorry, what?
No, we don't adjourn now. We adjourn, I'm sorry.
We'll move to executive.
So we have a motion to go into executive session for what reason?
Issues pertaining to employment history of a particular individual leading to the appointment, suspension, and discipline of that particular individual.
Have a second?
All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Thank you.